Yes, exactly. So I'm trying to figure out that magic formula, and hopefully I can tell you one day.
Okay, definitely. I get first dibs. So once you figure that out,
Right.
you got to come to me first with it. Hi, I'm Kyle Werkerly, certified professional ghostwriter. I'm glad you're listening as I welcome industry experts to share stories of lessons learned the hard way, overcoming professional hurdles, turning experience into actionable knowledge, and how to connect with your target audience. This is the Career Challenges Podcast. Welcome to this episode of the Career Challenges Podcast. My guest is Brittinay Lenhart, president of Work Culture Consultants. So, Brittinay, welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to meet everyone.
Awesome. So, Brittinay, you're a work culture consultant. I guess walk me through what that means and what people can expect if they want to work with you.
So I'm the owner and operator of Work Culture Consultant, and long story short, there people can either use me from the beginning if they have a startup business and they want to ensure that they establish a good culture from the beginning because they understand the importance of it, or if I happen to get a CEO or an HR director that feels like they have a culture that may be toxic or just isn't going well for them. They have a high turnover rate, so they understand that they need to fix their culture. I come in and do triage, if you will. So that's kind of the short and quick of that.
Awesome. And work culture, in my mind, some people think it's how the office looks or it's how, the colors on the wall or whatever. But obviously with the pandemic, it's not that anymore. We're mostly working from home. Those of us who are non-essential. So, how does work culture, I guess, really, how do you build a true work culture? It's not how the office looks, it's how people feel. I mean, how do you build that?
Right. Culture for me is not the feng shui of a business. It's not, like Google and everything where people are running around scooters. Culture is a business's vision, its mission, and its values. Everything stems from that. And the morale of teams, of businesses, that's really what a culture is the morale of everybody. It's essentially what that means to me. And it can either be well oiled or it can be toxic. And you, as a business owner, have the ability to make or break your culture by how it's stemmed from its mission, its values, and things like that.
True. What do the people in charge have to do? Like, what is that conscious effort? What does it look like to really embody that in how they interact with their coworkers, how they, handle their meetings, day-to-day stuff? How do they actually do that? Especially now that everything is mostly digital.
Right. I feel at this point in time with, working from home, it has a lot to do with communication. They're understanding how important communication is. And that was just as important, in the office, but now it's just really rearing its ugly head whether or not, a company has good communication skills, because now that's the only way people are able to work. There is no more face to face, so um, communication is huge, and leadership has to be there for the people. Culture is people first and everything else second, because it doesn't matter if it's a product or a service based business. If you hire people to do something for you, if you don't have people, nothing's going to get done. So that's why people have to be first. Your culture has to be founded on caring about your people, and so leadership is a big part of that.
So do you have an example of, where you had done that with a company? You had taken a company from where maybe their culture was not the greatest to, where the people do feel safe. They do feel that there's open communication with people at the top.
For an example that I have is, I guess I won't obviously name them, but there was a
Yes.
company where there was a bit of toxicity, and they had to realize that everything change like this has to come from the top.
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't work any other way. And le- there were people in positions that were not leaders. They were good at like their subject matter itself, but they weren't leaders. They weren't managing well on top of it. So we established that we really needed some leadership training because that was essential in rolling out all the changes that needed to be made for the culture in itself. You know, there was transparency, communication that needed to be had. And once people understood, in other, ranks below them understood that, you know, they understood that leadership saw that they had some failures and they admitted to that, and that was huge to them. They admitted that they needed to do better. And
Hmm.
so that made people below them be like, wow, they admitted this. And so trust was starting to form again where it was lacking. And, things did get better from there. So it had a lot to do with being transparent, communicating failures, owning them, and then taking the actions to do better. And there's a lot more to that, but I guess that's the short and sweet of it.
Short and sweet, yeah, definitely. So you said, there are people who weren't really leaders. Sometimes I feel, that word gets thrown around a lot. Be a leader, be a leader, and it's not something that's easily defined, though. It's not like a leader just checks off these boxes. For me, from the way I see it, it's a conscious effort by a person to, really guide people along a path towards a common goal. So then, my question to you, Brittany, how are you able to, I guess, take people who are not quote unquote leaders and hopefully give them the tools and equip them with that mindset and hopefully a drive to actually lead people and guide them towards a certain goal?
I recently partnered with RBLP. It's a
Hmm.
certification, and Dr. Coughlin made it. He's a fellow veteran friend of mine. He's a Marine, and he made this program, and it's resiliency building leadership program. And it's amazing. I took it. I'm now a coach and a trainer so that I can use it with my clients. And it's just they teach you the foundations of leadership.
Hmm.
And like I was saying a lot in my LinkedIn posts, there's an issue with, like you said, people not being able to differentiate between a leader and a manager. And
Hmm.
you're not just a leader just because you feel like you are. It's because of what you do for them. And so this RBLP certification definitely is something that I provide uh, companies because it really teaches them leadership so that they can implement it within their business. And the course material is just so good that that's why I partnered with him.
Hmm. Awesome. Awesome. So for you, what do you feel makes a good leader? Is it, I guess, necessarily drive, or is it how they empathize with people? I mean, what does a leader mean to you?
Definitely empathy. That's
Hmm.
that's huge, and it's lacking in the world. So um,
Yeah.
definitely empathy. To me, it's caring. Like it really sounds just too simplistic, but if you care about the company's vision and its mission, you care about people, everything else that happens with that, you care. So you're going to make sure, and people are like, oh, it's so simple. You can't, it's more than just caring. But if you care about how Bob's doing today, and
Hmm.
because he seems a bit down, and that's reflecting on his work, and then everything rolls downhill, you're helping because you care, which in turn not only helps Bob, it helps the company. So
Hmm.
it's just caring is just huge, and leaders care about people, whereas managers just manage process and or things, and that's
Hmm.
really the big difference.
True. True. I've heard people argue though that certain specific businesses, like a pizza place, that delivers pizza, they don't really need leadership training. They just need to get the pizzas out on time. I see some validity to that. Like if there's a place with high turnover, maybe leadership training isn't for them. But then again, maybe leadership training is what they need because they have such a high turnover. So, I mean, what would you say to that? Are there certain businesses that really don't need leadership training?
I totally understand what you're saying about the high turnover rates. I definitely
Mhm.
would never advise against it, because places like, In and Out that are just known for their customer service, their onboard training is so focused on, customer service and, leadership, and that's the reason that they get paid more. It's the reason that they have less turnover rates than a lot of these other places. That's the reason why their food's better. It's so comparatively, they care more, and
Mhm.
they put more training into their people, and it reflects everywhere. Just like Canes as well. People always talk about Canes. Oh, they always say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, and stuff like that. So there's definitely something to be said about putting more training into your people, even if you're, like a fast food joint.
Yeah. Uh, Chick-fil-A as well. They also
That-
have
That's
really, really
that's the one
great.
I was thinking about. Maybe
Yeah.
one of Canes.
Yeah. Well, Cane's nuts. I've eaten at Cane's. Their customer service, I guess, hasn't really wowed me. But then again, it hasn't deterred me. There have been certain fast food chains, I'm not going to name them, where I'm like, wow, these people are miserable. They are
Mhm.
not happy. And while the food may have been good, it was the overall ambiance of the place that kind of deterred me from coming back to it. And Cane's wasn't really like that. I think they did all right. But Chick-fil-A, because they've also been in the news a lot for their customer service and how they've gone above and beyond in multiple situations. So that Chick-fil-A always comes to mind, especially in the fast food industry, because
Right.
it is brutal. It is just
Hmm.
brutal working there. And I used to deliver pizzas, and I got to be honest, there was part of me that was like, I don't want to be here. And if I was rude to a customer, it's like, well, I've had a miserable day, so I'm sorry that you're taking it, but man, you have no idea what I've been through here.
Exactly. I feel like a lot more people need to be um, put in a position like that, even for a week, just so they can understand and have more appreciation for it.
Hmm. Definitely. And you had mentioned empathy earlier as well as a key characteristic of a good leader. What are some things that people can do to be more empathetic? I know it's not as simple as flipping a switch and saying, I'm going to be more empathetic now. It's a conscious effort. And so what are some steps that people can take to actually learn how to care and be compassionate towards their fellow man?
I think that, the golden rule goes hand in hand with emotional intelligence, which I always talk about. How would I feel if I talked to somebody like that? Or how would I want, if I'm having a bad day, how would I want my boss to talk to me?
Hmm.
And so if someone just looks inward first as to how they are about to approach a situation to somebody else, they just try to put themselves in the other person's shoes and be like, how would I want to receive this information or give this information if I was in the other position? I feel if people put more conscious effort into that thought process, it would go better for everybody.
So, workplace culture, are there a lot of thought leaders who speak specifically to that? Or is it really kind of more of a niche thing that kind of sits in between two other, I guess, bigger circles?
I suppose, Zappos, of course, is known for their amazing culture, and they have people within their organization that I've actually spoke to. They're very nice people that are, I guess, thought leaders in this area, and you can check them out on social medias. But it does seem a bit niche, I would say. I haven't met too many other people, honestly, in this arena that's, just dealing with work cultures.
Hmm, interesting. Was there any, I guess, books that you read on the topic as well, or kind of related well to the topic?
No, I wish I could say there are specific work culture books that I've read, but honestly, everything has just been little bits and pieces from many different leadership books that I've read that really talk about work, about work culture. But there's been no one book that I've gotten most of my nuggets from, if you will.
Oh, okay. So you've really done a lot of study and research into this as well, because it looks like there's not a centralized um, source for you to find it.
Right. I mean, my master's and bachelor's was both in organizational management and leadership. So, a lot of what I learned in my class material I got from there. And then I started with Chicago School of Psychology doing IO psychology certification. So that's
Mhm.
industrial organizational psychology. And a lot of IO psychologists deal with work cultures as well. It's a part of it, it's not the whole thing, but that's, I guess, another source of information for people to learn about that.
Awesome. Awesome. And so thinking back, as you're getting your degree and everything, was there a moment where you decided I'm going to focus more on workplace culture and helping people build that than I guess other types of consultancy?
I It really stemmed from, I went to a Tony Robbins seminar,
Yep. There you go.
and
Tony Robbins.
yeah, and I just was sitting there like, why can all these other people work for themselves and I can't? There's nothing holding me back. What I just need to figure out what is my passion and what's my, I need to find a niche, if you will.
Hmm.
So I stewed on that for 6 something months all the time. It was racking my brain. And I happened to be working at a very, very toxic place. And one day I quit because my anxiety was through the roof. I wanted to take anxiety medication again. It was so bad. And then I realized, there needs to be someone that can come and be the Hail Mary to these type of places that are about to go under for, having such bad work cultures. And I'm like, is that a thing? And
Hmm.
then I started researching it and I saw things that were kind of like that, organizational development, leadership training, this and that. But I wanted something way more niche. And then
Hmm.
I looked up work culture consultant domain. It happened to be a thing. And I was like, I don't know how this isn't taken yet, but I'm taking all of it.
Hmm.
Just kind of went
Wow.
from there.
Wow. That is amazing too. I'm surprised that nobody has really thought to focus just on workplace culture.
Right.
Huh. Well, good for you then, because then you get to jump on that and be the pioneer here.
Thanks.
Definitely. Um, so then, for companies that are very toxic, and they really do need help with their workplace culture, do they come to you, or do you approach them and say, "Hey, I can help your business run more efficiently"?
So the first step with toxic work cultures is self-awareness. And
Hmm.
so trying to pitch, if I find out that there's a place that is super toxic through, the interwebs, and it's pretty easy to figure out if a place has a, high turnover rate,
Hmm.
going to them and trying to tell them that they're a hot mess doesn't work well. Even obviously when you put that eloquently, in a
Hmm.
business format, it offends them. They don't like
Hmm.
it,
Yeah.
and they feel like they don't have a problem. And if some place is already that toxic, they don't realize that they are the problem. So
Hmm.
usually it's people who already have an awareness that they need to fix something. They've come to that conclusion, and it's more seeking me out than, and I'm still working on my own how to finesse the pitch to these companies that it works more effectively. But it's really hard to pitch to someone who doesn't think that they need, um, that they have a bad work culture, even though
Sure.
it's clearly evident. They don't want to hear it. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah, I always would like to know, is there a magic set of words that you can say to somebody to where they realize, "Oh, I do need this. I am the problem." And that's, if there really was out there, then somebody would have figured it out already, and they
right.
would be making millions.
Yes, exactly. So I'm trying to figure out that magic formula, and hopefully I can tell you one day.
Okay, definitely. I get first dibs. So once you figure that out,
Right.
you got to come to me first with it,
Deal.
and we'll split the millions down the middle. We'll do that.
I dig it.
So. Yes. So, switching gears here a little bit as well. You also have your own podcast, and tell me a little bit about that.
So it's also called Work Culture Consultant because I like to make things easy. And
Well, you're banking on the topic. You said you got the domain, so just Keep going with that.
right? All the social medias, everything.
Yes.
This podcast is, I just, I find CEOs who are already killing it. Like they're doing so great with their work culture. It's already a success. And I interview them because I wanted an audience to realize that what I'm doing is real. Like
Hmm.
obviously, here's the proof in the pudding. Here's a CEO who already has a successful work culture, and he or she is gonna talk about why they feel it's so important to them and why their business is killing it because of that. So they're not just hearing it from some consultant who they think is trying to just take their money. They're hearing it from the horse's mouth that work culture is essential to their success. So that's what
Definitely.
that's about.
Definitely. Awesome. And in the course of, interviewing these CEOs who are killing it, what have you learned? Because you said you've done a lot of research into the topic as well, and you've, helped companies yourself, and there's a lot of learning there. But I mean, what have you learned directly from these CEOs that has helped you in helping other companies?
The theme with all of them so far has definitely been values. Like
Ah,
they eat, sleep, and breathe their values. Everybody does. They're from the moment someone comes on board. Here, they are teaching them the values, and they don't just teach them and then like here's your onboarding training. This is our values that we don't align with. We're never going to speak about it again. They breathe them. It's everything they do. Their processes, their meetings, everything aligns with their values. That's been a key theme, definitely.
awesome. Awesome. And then in your experience talking with these CEOs, what is, I guess, one or two things that have kind of been counterintuitive, but actually turned out to work really well for them?
Putting them in plain sight. And I was like, I thought that was quite interesting. You don't really think about it, but I had this one CEO, he's actually a friend of mine, great guy, and their business is doing so well. And they literally, their their values are plastered on this big wall, and they're huge. And so it's like there's something to be said about just seeing it, and it almost gets ingrained into your head. And since they do their values on a daily basis, it's I guess, I don't know, just a nice reminder or something. But I thought that was interesting. I didn't realize the effectiveness of it, but they said it is very effective. So
Wow. Yeah, I've seen, company values, on a plaque by the door or something once or twice, but I never thought, putting it, on an entire wall. That sounds like a really good idea.
right, I mean, it can't
Yeah.
hurt.
Yeah, can't hurt. Yeah, make it so big that they can't ignore it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So then when they onboard new people into their company and they tell them their values, is it just a bullet point? Our value is integrity, our value is honesty, and da da da. Or do they actually use, I guess, some sort of story or a mnemonic device, something like that?
I would say it varies depending on the company, but they definitely, when it comes to values, they like them short and sweet, just words. Like,
Hmm.
for mine, I have you in my own set of values, and my biggest one is integrity. And
Hmm.
if I had an office, I'd plaster that on the wall too, because it's huge to me. It's one of my even personal values outside the office. But yeah, each company varies, but they definitely still list them out on in their onboarding.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. And so how long has your podcast been going?
It just started in January, and
Oh,
then
cool.
thanks COVID happens, which has been a running theme, unfortunately, for everyone at this time. So I only got January, February, maybe March, and I had people lined up. I have them in waiting. I'm actually going to be doing. The reason I haven't done them even over Zoom is because these people they're here in Vegas, and I want to actually do a video of it as well. So I'm just waiting until we can be free again and together.
Wow.
So
I'm sorry. That's rough. That's rough.
it
Huh,
happens, but hopefully
man.
everyone, we're all going to be okay here soon.
Yes, we will. We're doing a lot better as well. I'm here in San Antonio, and we locked down for, I want to say, a good 6 weeks, and then about 2/3 of the city was indoors most of the time, and I felt we did pretty well. I mean, we did have some fatalities, and we were sad about that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I feel San Antonio kind of dodged a bullet there. Places like Las Vegas that have a lot more tourism than San Antonio does. How did you guys fare?
Our cases, we definitely had some cases, but like once this all hit, all the businesses, like, we got hit hard in the sense of like business more so than like fatalities, just because
Mhm.
we are so entertainment driven. Our entire city pretty much shut down. There's people don't think that, oh, clubs are important or this and that, but that's literally, probably 30,000 plus jobs, probably more, probably over
Wow.
100,000 jobs that are none of them have a job right now.
Mm.
That's where we got hit so hard, and those type of places are going to be the last ones to open back up. So that's unfortunately where we got hit. And I don't, once everything goes back to normal, it's possible that we're going to get hit the hardest medically. Maybe once all the tourism comes back, because when you're drunk in a club in Vegas, you're
Hmm.
super close and no one cares. So I don't know how that's going to go at all, but I just feel really bad. So a lot of my friends are in the nightlife industry, so it's hard for people right now.
Mm. Oh. Well, hopefully things clear up soon, and Las Vegas can get back to entertaining.
Right.
The Communicate Influence podcast explores the obvious and less obvious issues and trends affecting PR, communications, and marketing. It is essential listening for individuals at the forefront of these industries. Discover the Communicate Influence podcast at communicateinfluence.com or via your favorite podcast listening app.
Would you like to be a guest on the Career Challenges podcast? Go to careerchallengespodcast.com to find out how. While you're there, check out other episodes and download them through Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, Castbox, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more. The Career Challenges podcast is hosted by me, Kyle Weckerly. I'm a certified professional ghostwriter who works with business thought leaders and industry experts to write polished manuscripts, assess their publishing options, and create book marketing plans. I've worked with consultants, high-ticket salespeople, coaches, speakers, C-level executives, and business owners. My authors have worked for USAA, Vistage, Booz Allen Hamilton, Austin Technology Council, and Twitch. My authors know that writing a book will help them change the world. They know that the story they tell will create that change. So they want to write a book to serve as a platform for their marketing endeavors. They know a published book will help them secure more speaking gigs, market their expertise, promote a product or service, and more. So reach out to Kyle Weckerly at weckerlywriter.com to start your publishing journey. Maybe you're not ready to start that journey just yet, but you do know that you want to write a book. So where to begin? Well, if you're ready, go to weckerlywriter.com to download 101 questions to ask before writing your book. This will help you get started and will offer guidance on the next steps to turn your ideas, experience, and actionable knowledge into a completed manuscript. Just visit weckerlywriter.com to get your free copy today. That's weckerlywriter.com. WECKERLYWRITER.com. And now, back to the Career Challenges podcast. So you've been posting a lot on LinkedIn as well. I've noticed some of your video clips, and I've been watching them too. They're highly entertaining, highly informative, great material there. Well, one of the things that jumped out to me is your concept of an ask hole. And so I was hoping you would explain a little bit more about that, and hopefully for our listening audience as well.
For sure. So ASK,
Mm-hmm.
asshole, are people who go around and they already have their answer in their head, but they
Mm-hmm.
go and ask a question to everybody in the office, let's say, and they're only asking it because they want to hear what it is that's in their head already. They don't want to hear anything that differs from what it is that they already feel is the answer. And so I call people like that assholes, because they're not asking me to hear what I have to say. They're asking me because they want me to agree with whatever it is that is already in their head.
Mm-hmm.
And I just explain how that's really not effective for business, because what you already feel is in your head, that's great. But what if I or someone else happen to provide you with something that's better than what's in your head? But you're so closed off to that already from the get-go that you're an asshole.
True. So how can somebody identify these people, but also mitigate the damage that they're doing?
I feel my intuition can pick up on these people rather easily, but you can normally tell someone that's an asshole by if you're having a meeting and they're asking questions and then you give them an answer and they're just super combative and already trying to tell you that you're wrong. They're not trying to listen to understand. They're just trying to listen to get everyone else to agree with them. So that's how you can usually tell they're just super combative once you finally do, give them an answer. And that's how you can find out who they are. To deal with those type of people, I like to just be very blunt with people like that. And tell them, do you actually want to hear what I have to say, or do you just want me to agree with you? And then you've just put them on Front Street. And then they have to internalize that, oh, she just, outed me. Now I actually might have to listen because I might have to debate this properly.
Yep. Definitely. And that's happened to me. Not that I've been an asshole, but I've realized, I wasn't listening, and now I look like an idiot. And so I've learned my lesson there. Always listen first.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. So, earlier when we were setting up the episode, you had mentioned the 48 Laws of Power as your favorite book. Who wrote that? I'm going to put that on my ever-growing list of books. And then, of course, why that book?
My dad actually put me onto that book as a kid. Surprisingly, it's rather adulty for a high schooler, but it does have a lot of life value, but definitely in business. And he definitely planted that seed early for a reason, and it has came to fruition in my career. So Robert Greene is the author, and one of the laws, if you will, talks about how you need to essentially never make your boss feel like they're dumber than you. And for some, that might be very like, well, of course, you never want to do that. But if you're someone like me, and maybe your boss isn't up to your standards, it's hard to not, make them feel that way.
Yes.
But the book explains, long story short, that you can't do that. That's not going to work for your career progress. You need to make your boss feel like they're smarter than you, even if you know without a power of a doubt that person might be an absolute idiot. It's not going to help you with your career process. Continue to do what you need to do to get where you need to go, but don't make your boss look like an idiot, because it'll never work in your favor. So it's these little nuggets of truth that are quite that he expounds on in the book, but things like that are just good life lessons for business.
Yeah. And that's also a hard lesson to learn, because, if somebody's not smart and they're doing damage because they're not smart, our first reaction is always to call them on it. And again, I've been on the receiving end of this. People have said, hey, you're doing something stupid. And of course I got defensive, and looking back now, I realized they were right. So then working off of that line of inquiry, how can you approach a boss specifically who may not be doing the smart thing and is instead causing more, not necessarily more work, but an inefficient and possibly toxic environment?
So I'm happy you brought that up, because he kind of talks about that in that same law, that you want to make, because you need to absolutely call them out, but make it their idea.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key. Making whatever you want to correct them on, make it their idea, because they're not going to be most likely receptive to the fact that even if you say it politely that they're wrong, they're not going to be receptive to that. So finding ways to word things to make it their idea, like, oh yeah, and then it's ego driven, but sometimes the reality in life is you have to help boost people's egos to get things done, and that's there's levels to that, of course, but definitely helping make things their idea. Use your emotional intelligence to help you word, craft how you approach somebody is huge. Like I was kind of saying before, you need to, how would you feel if they're in their shoes? Don't come at them crazy, like, oh, you're an idiot. Just be like, well, maybe have you thought about doing it this way? Just because just finessing it so it is an easier pill to swallow.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, jumping on emotional intelligence, because you had mentioned that, I'm seeing a lot of material come out now about how we need more emotional intelligence, or EQ is what they're calling it, and I hope it doesn't become a buzzword or anything. But how can people, because we can't make other people more emotionally intelligent, we have to first start with ourselves. How can somebody work on their own emotional intelligence? Is there resources that you would suggest?
Yes, I definitely would just buy a book about emotional intelligence, like one I have that I'm looking at right now on my bookshelf, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It's a huge one, it's a bestseller. I'm not even trying to promote them really, but it's just a good, like, there's better books than that, but that's a really a good, easy one of just learning about what emotional intelligence is in the first place. Because once you understand what that is, it's easier to digest all this other information about emotional intelligence. But it does seem a bit, I guess, buzzwordy lately, but I preach about it all the time because it's really important. Because, like, for example, if someone at work, is normal usually, and all of a sudden they are just super rude and coming at you like a spider monkey, normally, you're probably going to want to be combative back and defensive and be like, who the heck are you talking to? And maybe some other not polite words. But you have to take a step back and be like, that person doesn't, and you literally have to just not say a thing, assess what's going on, and be like, that person normally is not like that. Something triggered that, and it might not even be me. So the first step of emotional intelligence is, this situation might not have anything to do with me at all, but let me make sure first that I hadn't done something to trigger that person. So, make sure you have self-awareness. Try to first ask yourself, did I do that? Did I help make that happen? And if you realize it's not you, then obviously it's an external factor and it has nothing to do with you. So you need to be empathetic and pull them to the side and be like, hey, I realize something must be going on. Try to bring their wall down. Like, you're not normally like this. Let's talk, and do it away from people, which I've learned in the military, with leadership training. You don't do that in front of people. Pull them to the side and talk to them about it. But it's definitely really important. I feel like if more people had emotional intelligence, things wouldn't be so the way they are at work sometimes. Fresh, toxic, people are a lot more empathetic when they have emotional intelligence.
True. And empathy as well, too. Yeah. So, so then you'd mentioned your career in the Air Force and doing leadership training there. So I guess, did it start there with you, learning about emotional intelligence and also leadership? Was that where it started with you in the military, or was it really the 48 Laws of Power that your dad gave you?
I guess leadership more. I think it really started in the military. Those seeds that my dad planted didn't really come up till later. But I went through like Airman Leadership School. They have it. And then I also went on my own, and they were actually offering John Maxwell classes. And
Wow.
I hopped on those, because that's amazing. Like, I didn't even know John Maxwell. I just went to this 360-degree leadership class. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. I love leadership stuff because it's just super intriguing to me. And then I got, of course, put onto him and love all his materials, really good classes and stuff. And I guess my love for it really formed there. And then I just would analyze everybody that was in a supposed leadership position And throughout my, 8 years in the Air Force, I just kept being like, well, that person's not, I'm learning from this person, even if he's terrible, or he or she is terrible, because that's what I don't want to be as a leader, But when I had amazing ones, I'm like trying to take notes, like, well, look at that. Why this person's doing this, and look how many people are gravitating towards that person. I need to be like that. I guess that's where that all happened.
Awesome. Yeah, because it's always interesting to talk with people and where their motivations come from. Just I love stories. I love getting to the root of stories, and so hearing people's past and where that idea, I guess, started and then began to grow. It's always interesting to me, and so that's why I always try to ask those questions. And plus, I'm a ghostwriter. I help people write their stories this way. So it's like, oh, well, where did it start for you?
Right.
Yeah. So it's always fun. So thank you for letting me go off on that tangent there.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. So also you had mentioned when we were setting up the podcast that you were going to get Richard Branson on your podcast.
Oh, I am gunning for it. And
Awesome.
I know some people think that I'm crazy, but that's been my whole life, so no big deal. Anytime someone tells me that I can't, now I'm just going to do it that much more. But
Awesome.
I forget what they call it, but there's a term where, you're always only a few people away from whoever it is that you want to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
I forget, you know what I'm talking about. But
yeah,
I actually am that far away from Richard Branson because I have people who work for him that are not that far away from him. So I'm going to somehow one day talk to Richard Branson and hopefully have him on my podcast.
Awesome.
That because he is the reason is because he's obsessed with his people and his culture, and it reflects heavy. I mean, he has all these, quotes from Richard Branson about, caring about your people. And he doesn't just talk the talk, he walks it. Long story short, I have a friend who works for him, and he was, wrenching on some aerospace, stuff. And all of a sudden he looks up, and Richard Branson is literally just watching him right across the table from him. He's like, hi, and he literally will walk the floor. I mean, this guy is, a billionaire. He could just not care like most people do, but he genuinely walks the floor and goes and talks to people like it's no big deal. And he is just the epitome to me of why more people need to be like that.
Definitely. Yeah, you had mentioned, being only so many connections. Was it the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon? That jumped to mind. But Daniel Gomez, one of my first guests on the podcast, had told me, you're probably only one person away from that power connection. That
Mm-hmm.
one person that you can talk to who really gets you connected with the people that you can really help in your business or, whatever else you're trying to get going really takes off. So always be mindful of that. So I'm always like, oh, well, maybe everybody I talk to could be that next power connection. So
Right.
There's that. But Paul Padmore, another guest of mine, he has his own podcast, My Perfect Failure podcast. And he got Beth Comstock on there. And I was like, well, how'd you do that? He goes, well, I just pitched her. That's all I really did. She was going to be in the country. He's in the UK. He said she was touring UK for something. And he just sent her a pitch. And she said, yeah, I would love to be on your podcast. And that's how we got her on the podcast. I was like, that's impressive. I wish I could do that. And which I turned around right after that and I pitched Beth Comstock and she didn't respond. So I'll have to try again one of these days.
You will. You got this.
Thank you. So awesome. Well, we're just about out of time here, Brittinay. So if people want to listen to your podcast or want to connect with you and learn more about workplace culture, how can they find you?
They can find me at workcultureconsultant.com or Work Culture Consultant on Spotify or anywhere like that. And if you would like to follow my content on LinkedIn, just check me out at Brittinay Lenhart.
Awesome. Well, Brittinay, thank you so much for being on the Career Challenges podcast with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Career Challenges podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and like the Career Challenges podcast on your favorite podcasting app. Visit careerchallengespodcast.com for more information. And if you really like me, then you'll write a review. And don't forget to pick up your free copy of 101 Questions to Ask before writing your book by visiting weckerlywriter.com. That's WECKERLYWRITER.com.